question. Are you ready to reach new limits? It's time to change your family tree and redefine industry. Enough with all the cliche cookie cutter recommendations about finance, business, and life. You found the podcast to give you the tips you need to create the unconventional lifestyle and outcomes you've always wanted. It's time to build your own systems and play your own game. You're tapped in with the one and only Dan Nicholson, and this is Rigging the Game Podcast.
Listeners, I am super excited to share with you that my book, Rigging the Game, How to Achieve Financial Certainty, Navigate Risk, and Make Money on Your Terms, is finally available. If you want more details, check it out at riggingamazon.com. Jay, thanks so much for coming on. Really happy to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. It's an honor for me to be here talking CCA with you today.
Well, great. Well, we've really had a chance to get to know each other through the last cohort of CCA. So it's been a pleasure not only to meet you, but what I've appreciated that your spouse has come out to events, and it's just kind of an honor to me to when it extends beyond just the student and into the family. So I appreciate that first off. And with that, I like to ask tell me about yourself, but not necessarily the resume version. What is it that you want people to know about who you are as a person?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I could tell you what got me interested in the CCA. I've been a business owner for 20 years now. So, invested in numerous businesses, some good, some not so good. The business that has carried me for the past 19 years financially has been my tax businesses. And, I currently own 3 offices, and, at one point I owned 5. But last year I decided that, after putting some thought behind it, that it wasn't, something that I really wanted. It wasn't bringing me closer to what I really wanted in life. There wasn't the balance, in the sense that, you can't be a parent, husband, family member for half the year, and that's the kind of business that I felt like it was. And that's why I joined the CCA program. If I were to move on from this business that's carried me financially for 19 years, I wanted to make sure I had the proper guidance and the frameworks in place so I don't make a wrong decision. I didn't want to sit there and waste another 2, 3, 5, 10 years and find out that it was a wrong decision. You can see by the white hair that I have that I can't waste away any more valuable years of my life. So, that's how I got into CCA.
My kids have started telling me that I have white hair too, and I just keep telling them it's really blonde hairs. So I feel you on the white hairs. I think we're kindred spirits to some extent from my perspective, because you mentioned you have a tax business. I've run a tax business for years too, or primarily tax business. And we talk about in the CCA program this idea of rhythms, industry rhythms. And I know that that's informed some of your decisions. So would you mind sort of talking about how understanding the rhythm of your business has impacted some of the decisions you've made in the last 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, I could tell you the trend I've had for the past 19 years, like the industry rhythm of the tax business is, you have one deadline after another, which you can't really control. The spurts or when the busy times, you can't control the rush. No matter how much you want to, it's just something that you can't prepare for, and it's pretty grueling. Some of the biggest rhythm that I dealt with in this industry is right after tax season, because I deal with the thoughts of I want to get out. I'm done with this. I'm exhausted. I'm beat. I need to find something else to move on from, and that's what usually led me to making a lot of impulse decisions, emotional decisions, because I wanted out so bad. You could call that quick relief, from the pain that I had to go through. So those decisions haven't worked out too well over the past 19 years. But I didn't realize it until, CCA, and when you started talking about rhythms, and I was like, yeah, this is why I act the way I do. This is why I feel the way I do. This is why I might need a scotch of glass every night during tax season. I mean, so it's the rhythms really hit the spot. I mean, that was a turning point for me, to just be able to see it and seeing the trends and why it was happening.
Yeah, so the tax business, we've got these deadlines, 315, 415. We do these tax extensions. And I think most people who aren't in the business know that it's grueling, but they don't necessarily understand how grueling it is, because to a large degree, each client, when you start working on their return, it's like Russian roulette. You don't know if they're getting a refund or if they owe. If they get a refund, they're like, man, Jay, you're the smartest person in accounting. Like, you really know your stuff. The person I worked with last year, I owed. I can bring your stuff to you. Like, you work some magic. And you probably did work some magic, but some of it is how much did they pay in and how did the tax laws change and so on and so forth. That same person next year comes in, they owe. Like, Jay, did you have like a head injury? Like, you're terrible. And so each client, each tax return, each meeting, it's such an up and down. And during these tax season, you're working a tremendous amount of hours, and you're going between people who are being incredibly rude and mean to people who are being really nice. And a lot of it's outside of your control. And so you get to the end of it, and I'm projecting. You get to the end of it. I mean, I had this experience. If my wife and I started dating, I prepared her return the first year we were dating. She owed. Her dad had always done her return in the past. She's like, are you sure my dad, who has no background in accounting, shouldn't take a look at this? Like, I thought, even people who love you, if they owe, they're like, I don't know if you know what you're doing. So you go through all that, you work a tremendous amount of hours, and you get to the end of it, and you go, I don't think I can do another year or another cycle of these hours and the roller coaster of people loving and hating you. And so we talk about that as an industry rhythm. You can't change the fact that that's how the industry is, that there's deadlines. What happens is we make business decisions, business decision rhythms, or a personal rhythm that can destroy everything that we've done, all the progress we've made. And so I share these things in CCA from my own personal experience. And so Jay, I think we're similar. For years, I would get to the end of tax season and I'd want to start another business. I'd do a new marketing campaign. It's like, there's got to be something different. And then I dig a ditch that I have to bury out. And I'm almost guaranteeing myself having to do the next tax season because I now spent so much on these new things. So
I can relate to all of it.
So kind of shifting into what we were going to talk about today, which is we have these 4 commandments as part of our certainty operating system. The 4th one is we need to bias making decisions, investments, etc., that has asymmetry to the upside. And that just basically means that either that it has significantly more benefit than it has downside, and potentially, hopefully, no downside. But oftentimes, most of us have made bets where we have more downside than upside, and we've tied up our resources. I'm either going to be make a bunch of money or I'm going to be homeless. Like, okay, well, homeless seems worse than making that 10 grand that you were working towards. So I know you've ingested that information and you've got some things that you're working on, but how has asymmetry to the upside changed your decision making?
I mean, the first thing is just taking a look at all the investments I made in the past and just looking at were all those bets asymmetric to the upside, and then realizing that most of them were not, and just seeing how they weren't. That helped me understand a lot as far as the decisions I've made in the past. But I think sometimes you make these emotional decisions and you only think about the upside, but you never look at the consequences and what could possibly happen. For example, I opened a fitness center. I I always wanted to be, as fitness was my thing. And, I was like, I would love to get into this industry, but I've never worked in the industry. I don't know nothing about it. And I only looked at the upside. I looked at, oh, wow, I'm going to finally be able to do something that I'm passionate about. But I didn't look at that 10-year lease on a 12,000 square foot space that I was locking myself into. And also the fact that I didn't have any knowledge in the business. And I also didn't look at the fact that it's a franchise where I have no room to make adjustments. It's, the model is the model, and you can't change anything because it's a franchise. So I kind of locked myself into this investment and only looked at the upside. But I realized, I was like, man, there's a lot more downside in that investment that I never even considered. And there's a list goes on and on. I'll never go through my investment.
Yeah, it's easy when you learn these principles or you have a new orientation to feel a bunch of shame and guilt. How have you managed to kind of recover from reviewing those past investments, and what have you done with that information?
I mean, well, I looked at my past investments. I looked at where I'm at currently. I mean, seeing where I was in the past, seeing where I'm at right now, and just, man, I just feel so confident. I feel like whatever I do next is going to be well calculated. All the, I mean, there's so many principles, and they all tie in together. And like the barbell strategy ties in all those principles and commandments all into one, it seems to me. And I feel very confident that, hey, I'm gonna make sure that I compile, I analyze, I do all the things I haven't done in the past.
Yeah.
And all bets will be to the upside, and I will consider downside from now on, because I can't afford to lose it all. Like you said, being homeless. So there's some things are not worth it. If my barbell is balanced, then there's no need to swing it one way.
Yeah, so barbell, just to kind of tie it together for the listeners, is this concept. Nicholas Nassim Taleb has probably made it the most famous, but it predates that. And it's this idea that barbell has weight on both sides and there's a bar in between. Right? And so we want to think about our investments or our businesses in this sort of concept where on one end, we have a very reliable, predictable source of income. On the other end is only opportunities that have significant upside. They might not be reliable, probably aren't reliable, but they have significant upside. And we don't want anything in the middle. And what we end up seeing is that either someone only has one side of the barbell, or more likely they have everything in the middle. So they don't have a reliable business and they don't have any businesses that have significant upside. Now, just from personal experience, CPA firm, that should be a highly reliable business, right? But what can happen is when we try to make it more than it isn't, like we try and turn it into a 10x business. It's a relationship-based business. It's very hard to 10x a relationship-based business in a short period of time. We make all these bets and we move it from being reliable to in the middle. It's never going to be something that's going to cash us out overnight. We're trying to make it that, or I've tried to make mine that at times. Again, a lot of things that I teach are from my own mistakes and learnings the hard way. And so we try to make it upside and we leave it in the middle. So it's neither reliable and it's never going to cash us out. And so the action is, how do we move it to one side? How do we get it over to reliable or upside? And it turns out that frees up a lot of resources. I think you've experienced this. When I stop trying to make my accounting firm something more than it isn't, and I just make it reliable and I make it as profitable as possible, now I freed up all the time and resources to reallocate it to the big home run plays. So you've done that. And how has that improved your life? And what does your family and spouse think about it? Because the CPA firm business, accounting firm business is really tough on spouses and family.
Oh, it is for sure. It just, I mean, to know where you're at. Like, I mean, if I never would have even considered, hey, where am I at on this barbell? Like, do I have my reliable investments? Am I playing it on the other side as well? And when I took at the overall picture of where my current state, I'm like, I'm perfectly balanced even without my tax business.
Mm.
So that actually helps me move on from that. But I don't think I would have even thought in that terms if I didn't think about it or analyze it in that sense. Like if I want to put everything I have into that model, I never would have even thought about that. But I feel comfort knowing that, hey, I am still in a good place without it. So then the tax business is pretty much me chasing more, than, getting what I really want out of life. And I think what I realize is I need to have confidence in myself to know that I could find something better that's going to be more reliable and more fit the model that I want. It's just the certainty of misery over the misery of certainty that like you always hear about, and I've been doing that for a while now. So I just now I'm in a different space where I have the confidence where I know I can move on.
We talk about there's the currency of money, but there's also the currency of time and energy and so on and so forth. What has that done for your time and energy? And
Yeah, like I mean, when you look at the tax business if you look at the reliable side of it, the financial side of it is reliable. I mean, it's recession proof. You're gonna make money, and you're gonna have that money coming in every year. But you're gambling when it comes to your time and energy every year, right? Because you don't know, it's a seasonal business, so you never know what type of employees you're going to get because you can only hire seasonally. The good ones will find jobs somewhere else. The bad ones will come looking for jobs again during tax season, right? So, so then you're gambling as far as, hey, this year I might end up with a good staff, or if I do, then I'm set. But if I don't, then I'm, and
yeah,
playing the fire again. So yeah, time and energy was on the wrong side of the barbell. Financially is one. It wasn't all bets to the upside.
now you've started a new program, I think, teaching some kids some of these concepts and principles. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, going through CCA, there's a thought that kept running through my head is like, man, I wish I would have known this when I was younger. I would have made a better decision. Maybe I wouldn't have made the decision at all. And I'm like, it took me such a long time to figure it out. But kids, if kids were able to pick up some of these principles and frameworks at a young age, they'll prepare them before they make these wrong decisions. I mean, they say, learn from your failure, but you don't have to do that, knowingly. I mean, you could avoid it. You can make calculated decisions and still make mistakes. At least it's a calculated decision. But now people are just making decisions blindly, to start off their careers, which is a problem. So that's where I got the idea of base case and build, where setting up weekly meetings. I have a 15-year-old son. My first thought is I can't sit there and, hey, let's talk CCA principles at home. I mean, these is like I'm lecturing you. Right. So I was like, if I create a program with other kids his age, and we talk about some of these principles together. And then their tasks are to go and talk to their parents about it. So then, they start having conversations as a family as well and see different perspectives, then it's going to stick. I love the way you taught the CCA. You continuously, repeatedly mentioned over and over again some of these principles. And then, like you said, you might be in a different mind frame, set or frame, where it sticks, right? It might not, in the beginning, it's just like, okay. And then finally, okay, now I get it, So I'm kind of using the same methods when I'm teaching this having these weekly calls with the kids.
Yeah, what you're alluding to, what we start every CCA class when we get into the operating system, where I talk about the orientation, least amount of risk, least amount of effort, most amount of options to fund what you want on your terms. And we go into it. And the thought that I had was that I need to say it enough times that my students are annoyed by it. And they're like, I know what Dan's about to say. Because that's the point in which I've done my job. Right? They know what I'm going to say next. in which case maybe it's not reflexive at that point, but it's enough that they're going to catch themselves sooner than later. Because really we're trying to not be perfect. We're trying to recover faster from a bad mistake. And so that's awesome, with your kids. Hopefully at some point, and maybe already, your son's like, shrug, like, yeah, okay, Dad, I know what you're going to say.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing the exact same thing. There's a recap every day, and it's going over the same things that we talked about. I've noticed the conversations I'm having with him are different, which is, I mean, that's a sign. The parents are already telling me that the conversations that they're having, and they're seeing the difference as well, because they soak up so much. We don't even realize how much they can soak up. It might not seem like it because they might not be responsive, but they're taking it all in.
Well, just to recognize you, I mean, I appreciate the consistency in the way that you showed up to class, and it's clear to me that amongst your peers in the cohort, like, people look to you, they want to know what Jay has to say, and nothing makes me feel better than to know that you're out there in the world teaching kids, teenagers, a different orientation. So that I'm proud of you, and that gives me a sense of pride as well. So thank you for the work that you're doing, sincerely.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you're the man. Man. You've what you teach in CCA is just amazing stuff.
Well, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on, and hope to see you in person soon.
All right, thanks, man.
All right, thanks, Jay. I hope you enjoyed today's show as much as I did. Now, if you're interested in learning more about my book, Rigging the Game: How to Achieve Financial Certainty, Navigate Risk, and Make Money on Your Terms, go to riggingamazon.com. If you're interested in joining our next cohort in the Certainty Certified Advisor Program, go to certaintyu.com.